Welcome back to the Football League Paper Podcast. My name's Matt Badcock. I'm joined by the FLP's editor, John Lyons, and chief writer, Chris Dunlavy. Chaps, thanks for joining us. We've made it to week 2. We've been a success so far. They haven't cancelled us yet. How are we?
Afternoon.
Yeah, all good, thanks. Yeah.
Good. It's we enjoyed it the first week. We're getting up and running into our new weekly podcast, and Chris managed to upset some Ipswich fans. That was good. I don't think he quite intended to, but my fault for asking that question and dropping you in the mud. But me and John we were on the other side of the fence. So hopefully Ipswich fans are still enjoying listening to us. And let's start there because we do have an Ipswich fan in the office. We always hear him singing "Philogene is not my lover." The lad is absolutely flying for them. They've got a huge game on Friday night against Middlesbrough. Obviously, no championship action last weekend and in the week because of international break. But it'll be good to have the championship back this weekend, and that seems to be a fantastic game that we're all going to be interested to see. What do you kind of make of that one, Chris? We'll start with you. Middlesbrough Ipswich, a huge one on Friday night.
Well, it's two funny teams in it, weren't it? Because they've sort of the form's reversed. So Middlesbrough that blinding start of the season where they kept winning, and Ipswich couldn't buy a win. And sort of at some point, kind of after the last international break, I think it just kind of flipped round, and suddenly Middlesbrough 1 win in 5, Ipswich flying. Kieran McKenna manager of the month, like you said. Jayden Philogene's absolutely on it. And I think it's probably just kind of equalised a bit, really. So, yeah, I mean, you're probably looking at it and you'd probably say Ipswich are the favourites on form, I would say. And that a pretty disrupted summer, didn't they, in terms of, they lost the lap, they lost a couple of players, lost Hutchinson. They had to kind of rebuild a little bit. So you'd probably kind of expect a slow start. And the same in reverse with Borough, really. I think John said it quite early on that didn't, it wasn't realistic to expect them to maintain that kind of form. Nobody really fancied them at the start of the season. So a new manager, that sort of stuff. I don't think anybody should be too alarmed that they've had a little sort of slip. So yeah, I think that's kind of that's probably where they should be at this point.
Yeah, John, Chris is saying there about Ipswich's summer. Is it kind of easy to forget that? How much change there was in the off season and coming back down from the Premier League, and it's maybe going to take them a little bit of time to get going again.
Yeah, obviously, as Chris has mentioned, they've obviously probably lost a few big hitters there, and it's not necessarily all that easy to come back down from the Premier League into the Championship and get off to a flyer. Obviously, you can have a little bit of a hangover there. So they've done well to sort of turn it around and start sort of putting the performances together. But it is going to be a tough game up at Borough. You think it would be sort of fairly sort of tight up there. They probably overachieved a little bit at the start of the season, Middlesbrough. People didn't really expect them to be probably right up there. So they've done well. They've had a little bit, but just a slight wobble. Obviously, they lost that game at Portsmouth before the international break. So the key for Rob Edwards now be seeing if he can get his team to sort of bounce back. I mean, it's a great opportunity for them at home on a Friday night. There'll be a big crowd there, so they'll be well up for it to sort of turn Ipswich over.
I'm quite interested to see what I sort of wrote about it last week with Jack Clarke and Jayden Philogene, in the sense that they've got basically the two sort of best players this season really are both in the same position. So Philogene's scored a lot of goals, but Jack Clarke last few weeks has come on and scored some really important goals. They're sort of both big money signings, both left wingers. And it's sort of, you wonder what he's going to do long term, whether he's going to try and somehow fit both of them in the team, or whether one will be happy being on the bench and the other one playing. It's sort of difficult to, it must be very tempting for McKenna to try and get both of them in the side at the minute.
Yeah, Ipswich should be on a bit of a high. Ipswich should be on a bit of a high as well after beating Norwich, obviously in the derby before the break. So they'll obviously, they probably didn't want to have that international break. They probably wanted to keep the momentum going after that. So sometimes you never quite know how things will pan out straight after that break. Are the teams going to come back with the same rhythm they had, or are they going to sort of not quite be able to do that? So that makes it a little bit more of an unpredictable game on Friday.
Yeah, they're funny, the international breaks, aren't they? The season gets going, all the hype gets going, a little break resumes, and then another little break. It's a bit does feel a bit stop-start this time of year.
Yeah, it can be a bit it can be a bit frustrating. Obviously, from our paper's point of view as well, it is frustrating. We just get into that rhythm of the weeks going by with all the full programs, and then we lose the championship on those weeks. And just another thing was obviously the manager of the month for last week was announced, and Kieran McKenna got it in the championship. It was only for three matches, 7 points from 9. So it was a little bit of a strange one. There were probably one or two other managers who probably felt that they had just as equal a shout for it. But obviously, when there's only so few games, sometimes you don't get too many options. But yeah, the start of the season is a bit funny. I think we all feel a bit happier once we get that international break out of the way in November, and we know we haven't got another one then until probably March time. We can sort of really get stuck into it.
Yeah. So we were talking last week, Chris. You sort of mentioned there's been a bit of chat about sort of merging this big international break, isn't there? And
yeah, I think
the impact that might have on the
as far as I understand it, it's a done deal, I think, isn't it? I think is it the September and October ones, I think, are going to be joined together into some kind of mega 3-week international break. So I think the idea is that it creates less disruption, because instead of having a kind of two weeks where of international football in 2 weeks in September, 2 weeks in October, you have 1 3-week period. And I think theoretically it should disrupt the calendar less. But yeah, it will just mean sort of. I mean, I guess it'd be really what I think what you might find, unfortunately, for managers, is that if anybody's going to sack a manager, they'll do it then, because all of a sudden you're going to have this 3-week period where there's no football, certainly in the Championship. And if you're looking at it as a sporting director or whatever, you're going to be like, well, okay, we'll get a new guy in now. He's got 2-3 weeks to work with the players. So yeah, I think it could be a bit of a bloodbath in that sense.
Yeah, it could be all change. It'll be interesting how it affects League One and League Two as well. So, there are games postponed because of international call-ups in those divisions as well, isn't there? Every international break. So be teams in League One not playing for 3 weeks on end as well. It'll be it will be interesting how it pans out. But we're talking about Ipswich there and how they've come down from the Premier League and started, and maybe move on to Leicester, who are in the same boat but sort of starting to climb up there again.
Yeah, well, they're a funny team because I think they've, like I say, I've sort of been watching them, and they've not been spectacular at any point. They've not blown anybody away, as you would kind of maybe expect for teams relegated from the Premier League, but they're just grinding it. And I think they've got great players. Fatau's a quality player. Jordan James has made a massive difference. I think since he's come in, I think they're a very good technical side. They could knock the ball about really well. They could keep the ball really well. But I think what he's given them is sort of this dynamism. He drives from midfield. He gets them up the pitch. He breaks the lines. He scored that amazing goal before the international break. And I think that has made a massive. It's suddenly turned them from this side who can kind of keep the ball and control games into ones who can kind of explode into life and score goals as well. So I think they'll just purely based on the quality they've got, I think they'll be up there. They'll be up there unless there's any more off-field ructions, but I don't think there should be.
Yeah, I think Marty Cifuentes obviously did do a good job at QPR. Obviously, it sort of finished a little bit sourly there, but when he was there, I did like him. I liked his positivity, his enthusiasm, his passion for the game, and you felt as though he probably did deserve a job where he would have sort of slightly more resources to play with. So I'm not surprised they're up there. Was it not the easiest time to sort of take over there, and there's been a bit of sort of turmoil there as well with different things going on and off the pitch. But I think I do think he is a good manager. So it's not a surprise they're up there, and obviously then he can work with his squad of players up until January, and then maybe they can add one or two if they need it then as well.
Yeah, do you think that expectation is the hardest thing when you're having to manage to come into a new club? But so there's lots of going on, but you have got to start winning games really quickly in the Championship. Otherwise, you can get sort of lost pretty quickly, can't you?
Yeah, well, obviously because Leicester have been up there in the Premier League and winning leagues and winning cups and stuff, they don't want to hang about in the Championship. So there is, even though there's a bit of turmoil at the club and what have you, the fans will still expect them to be up there and challenging for it at the very least. So they're going to be an interesting one to sort of keep an eye on, and would be interested to see how the manager copes over the long term.
Yeah, talking about expectations and former Premier League clubs, obviously Javi Gracia coming back in at Watford. We talked about it on last week's show, didn't we? And the change that was about to come there, and they've gone for. I think he probably knew the code to get into the building when he turned up at the training ground.
Don't know. It's easy to forget. Most of them are only there for about 25 minutes, aren't they? So probably don't get time to memorise it. But no, I don't know. I don't know where to start with Watford. I mean, I think with Gracia specifically, it's easy to forget all Watford managers, what any of them've done, because they are there for such a small time and there's been so many of them pass through. It's really hard to remember what each one of them did, or whether they were good, whether they were bad. It's hard to remember. But I was like, when he came back, I didn't realise that he was responsible for the highest Premier League finish, for instance, and he was the guy who took them to the FA Cup final. Like, I'd completely forgotten that. But so he is a good manager. He's a proven guy, but how long is he going to get? I mean, if they lose 3-4 in a row, will he get sacked? Could do. I mean, it's just all. There's no until they stop doing it. I mean, what can? It's really difficult to understand. We had a column with Guy Branston last week, and it was interesting. He looked at it from a business perspective. He said, from a business perspective, it's a really well-run club. They sign players cheap, they sell them high, they make a bit of money. Everything's good, but I don't understand how sacking the managers helps that at all, really, because it doesn't get them anywhere. They sort of sit there, pretty much having the same season over and over and over and over again. And at some point, you've got to think that will stop making them attractive to players who are going to come. But who knows? Maybe not. Maybe they see the development pathway and think, yeah, I'll join anyway. And I think the long and the short of it is, what Watford want to do is develop, or what Watford's owners want to do is develop players for sale, and they buy them and they go like that, and hope that sooner or later they get a team and a manager who challenges for the top six and kind of gets promoted by accident. Is genuinely what I think they do. It's a secondary concern.
Yeah, obviously difficult with the fans because they want to see their team back in that Premier League as well, don't they? And pushing into the playoffs like they've had in the past, I guess, John.
Yeah, I think also last season they did sort of stick with sort of Tom Cleverley for quite a long time, and you thought maybe they were going to give him time. Maybe give him a couple of years potentially, just so that you get a clock at Watford for that amount of time. But it looked as though they were finally sort of going to put their faith in him as a young manager, bring these sort of young players through and develop them. So it was frustrating when they obviously got rid of him, and they brought in Pezzolano from Uruguay, and obviously there's been quite a bit of, it's been well sort of documented that his English wasn't great, and obviously in terms of communication it wasn't great. So you think probably better off sticking with Cleverley, and he would have probably learned from his first season, and he would have probably grown even more. So let's see what he does at Plymouth.
Yeah, interesting first game from away at Sheffield United this weekend as well, and they've had we were talking about it last week again, had a real funny start to the season, the Blades, haven't they?
Yeah, well, I did touch on it last week, but I think it's just like I said last week, it's mystifying because they've got a manager who's been there and done it now. They've got players who've been there and done it. They've got a ton of quality on the pitch. Confidence, I guess. Confidence, losing a few games, losing the playoff final last year maybe, but it's difficult to see how they could stay down there and how they could keep losing. But I suppose people said the same thing about Luton last year, and they did, and that was all clearly mental. It was all, they were the same. They had a lot of good players, but it was all in the head. So who knows? I mean, I think the worry from they've obviously got Chris back, but given how fast the sacked sellers, my fear would be that they'll then do the same to Chris. Which would be ridiculous because he's proven he's done it. He's done it twice, really. I mean, you got them promoted once, got them to a playoff final the next time. That's one game. Anyone can lose one game. So they're in good hands, but I just slightly fear that they're in a bit of a hurry to reach the Premier League, and they're going to chop and change and kind of try and do it too fast.
Yeah. The good thing with Chris Wilder is obviously he knows. Really, no one knows those players better than he does. So you would imagine that he would be able to get a tune out of them. The games came thick and fast, didn't they, before this international break? So now he's had a couple of weeks to work with them. You would expect a better performance against Watford, and if they could get that win coming back off the break, then that could be huge for them to give them a little bit of momentum and maybe go on a little bit of a run. So I think there'll be a lot of neutrals keeping an eye on that, on what happens in that game as well.
Yeah, you certainly would have had Sheffield United below Sheffield Wednesday at this stage of the season. I mean, maybe not something we're necessarily had to sort of earmark to chat about, but what do you make of what's going on the other side of the city in Sheffield, and this just this mess that they find themselves in? Doesn't seem to be any kind of end in sight at the minute, and there's lots of talks about the fans are going to be boycotting the Middlesbrough game in a couple of weeks, or I think the week after this one. So that there's a real sort of malaise at the club, and a kind of a feeling of helplessness probably among the fans, and they're trying to do as much as they can. But at the moment, there is no end in sight for Wednesday fans until Chanziri sells or the regulator comes in and actually forces a decision. And listening to the regulator last week, I didn't fill me with a load of confidence that that's actually is going to happen, because there was a lot of, well, we could make him sell, we could do this, we could, it was all very after thorough investigations. And I don't know if as a Sheffield Wednesday fan you'd be filled with a huge amount of positivity after hearing that either.
No, I don't think you can rely on the regulator, partly because it'll take so long for them to get those sorts of powers and to get everything, kind of get the whole thing up and running and in order. I think it'll be potentially too late by then, sadly.
But this could be a real problem for the regulator though as well, because this is the big marquee case now, isn't it? Right, let's see what teeth you've got, and if they aren't able to do anything, then the confidence is going to go straight out of it, surely.
Well, you'd think so, yeah. But I still think it'll take so long to grind into action and I suspect that's why there's a lot of talk of investigations and gathering evidence and all that sort of thing, because they don't want to jump into action before they're ready to do something or before things are fully formed. So I think at the minute you are still relying on Chanziri to sell, which nobody really knows if he wants to do they? I mean, he says he does, but
doesn't seem like it. Doesn't seem like he wants to sell, does it?
Yeah, and the price tag is meant to be £100 million, isn't it? Which seems slightly inflated to say the least. So, you just wonder, who is going to be able to come in and sort of buy it, or who is going to want to buy it, anything like that kind of price. So yeah, it's frustrating. Obviously, from the fans' point of view, they obviously the fans obviously on the pitch the other week. They want to they obviously want to publicise it, but obviously they don't want to make it worse for the team that they support by potentially coming on the pitch or getting a game abandoned, and then the club getting sort of docked potentially more points than they could get docked for other matters off the pitch. So there are a lot of issues there.
Well, I mean, in some ways, the season's a write-off anyway, isn't it, right, Matt? Because there's a points deduction coming.
There's a point, but what points deduction? That helps nobody, does it? What a point! Points deduction. Whether right or wrong, I know that they're coming, but they're pointless. They're literally pointless, because they just do not help anybody any situation other than punish somebody who doesn't who aren't able to control it. This is where this is where obviously the regulator comes in, but the fans at Sheffield Wednesday, and we've seen at other clubs as well, they need help. They need football to lead on it and help them. What else? It shouldn't be that they're having to decide whether to go onto a football pitch to stop a game or to get arrested or risk banning orders and things, because nobody's helping. This is where I think football needs to help.
I completely agree, and in fairness, I do think the Football League have started to kind of realise this and stop and focus. Because if you think of Reading last year, the Football League was making a massive effort to not deduct points when kind of by the letter of the law there could have been, because wages were going unpaid and that sort of thing. And I think by the end, when Reading got deducted, was it 18 points over 3 years? And I think by the end of that, there was no appetite whatsoever to keep taking more. That's why they kept trying to sort of sanction the owner individually and fine him and kind of force him out. So I think there is a realization that that's what's needed, and I think there will be a reluctance to dock points. But ultimately, I think the problem is you've got clubs who will go, well, we got docked points when we did this.
And clubs will say, well, we're paying our wages, we're doing everything right. Why should we? Yeah, and I get all that. I understand all that. But it's, it's a difficult situation. I'm worried that this regulator is not going to come in.
It is very much a blunt instrument, though. It doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't solve anything. It's like, oh, sorry, you deducted me points, I'll start paying the player, shall I? That doesn't,
exactly. It doesn't. If the owner doesn't care what happens to the club, he's not going to care if you get docked 6 points, is he?
Yeah. But again, going to rumble on, and like you say, the regulator, is it going to come in any sort of time? Not so sure. But we bit of admin before we move on to sort of our next section. Obviously, thanks again for tuning in. We had a great response to last week's first podcast. If you like and subscribe, that's really appreciated. Really helps out the channel. We've got lots of content on there, lots of non-league content on there as well, if that's your thing. But we've got a new manager moving on into League One. We had it on the front page of last week. Jack Wilshere is in at Luton, and his first senior role. Obviously, he's been in Arsenal's academy. He's had that spell at Norwich as well. But a really an appointment to make us all feel old, because he's only 33, and you sort of think, I remember watching him when he was coming through as a 16-year-old at Arsenal, and he had this. Everyone knows about his career, but he's been on this sort of management and coaching pathway for a little while, and a bold appointment for Luton. I just wonder to get your thoughts on that, but also how important will his assistant Chris Powell be as well, because that seems to be a shrewd addition to the coaching staff to help the young manager through in his first job. Yeah,
well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because remember last week we were talking about Steve Cotterill going in at Cheltenham and the column that Adam Virgo wrote. So Adam Virgo wrote that these struggling clubs go through 3 stages where they have a manager who gets sacked, they have a left field appointment that doesn't work, and then in about April they turn to some old hand who comes in and saves the day. And the point that I think John made the point last week that sort of what Cheltenham had done, it cut out the middleman and gone straight for the old hand to save the day. And it's funny because kind of Luton have done exactly what he said in some ways. They've kind of gone for this unexpected appointment, someone who's fairly inexperienced, and there's no doubt that it is a gamble, right? I mean, he's a big name, and he could be an absolutely magnificent coach, but it is a gamble because nobody knows. Does he know League One? Does he know the players? It's a bit of a lottery, isn't it, when you appoint someone like that? But I think what it can't fail to do, like any big name appointment, is kind of galvanise the players, because he's going to come in, he's Jack Wilshere, he's going to get instant respect, he's going to impress them by dint of who he is. And I think that's not a bad place to start when, a bit like we just said with Sheffield United, Luton are a club who they're clearly better. They've got better players than the performances are showing. They just need a bit of a sort of a G up, something to kind of kickstart the confidence, and that could be exactly what he is.
Yeah, John, they've all, there's often a thing about young managers, isn't there, and coming in and getting these opportunities, but everyone's got to start somewhere. He's obviously been, on the coaching pathway for quite some time, and a club that he obviously knows really well, because it's where he started and where he began. I saw a video of them walking through in the stadium the other day, and there's his England shirt on the wall. I think he said it was from his debut as well. So it's a club that means a lot to him as well, and that can count for a lot, can't it?
Yeah, and that might sort of help sort of galvanise the fan base, as well. He's not just Jack Wilshere coming in from Arsenal, wherever he's been, but he obviously has got that little bit of a local sort of connection there as well. I suppose on the plus side as well is Luton are about mid-table in League One, so he's not sort of dropping into a team in a relegation battle or anything like that. And they are sort of close. I mean, a few wins and they'll be right up there. So it is going to be interesting to see how he sort of puts his own stamp on it. Is he going to be one of those managers who's going to have his philosophy of playing sort of quality football, pressing football, passing football? Is he going to want to change things quite quickly at Luton to get them playing the way he wants, or is he going to be a bit more pragmatic and see what he's got to work with and try and sort of mould to that a little bit as well? So yeah, it's going to be an interesting few months, because if he can get them started and get them on a run, then from his own point of view, it's a great opportunity potentially to put a promotion on his CV, whether that be this season or potentially next season or whatever. We sort of think Luton have obviously got the potential to get out of that division. So from that point of view, he could potentially get his managerial career off to a great start if he can do it.
Yeah, and Chris, with Pat, like saying Powell coming in alongside him, this is kind of the role he filled at Sheffield Wednesday with Danny Rawley. Rawley came in, didn't know the league necessarily. Obviously had his great, unbelievable sort of kind of coaching background at the highest level, and had worked with the German national side. But it was his first big job in England. But someone like Powell, who knows the way, the lay of the land, how everything about English football has obviously been in it, he's managing it. How important can someone like him be alongside you in the dugout, alongside a young head in the dugout?
Yeah, well, he's won promotion from League One as well, hasn't he? With Charlton, like obviously a good few years ago, but he knows what he's doing. Yeah, I mean, Chris, I've spoken to him loads over the years, and I think it's not just that he's got the experience as well. It's kind of who he is, and he's such a lovely bloke. He's he's such a nice guy, Chris, and you can talk about anything, and he'll talk to anyone. And I think it's when he's the kind of guy as well where it would be easy to worry that someone was kind of waiting to jump into your shoes and kind of take your job and all that kind of stuff. But I think someone like Chris, that's not what he's about. He is there to be a sounding board. He loves helping people, and I think he's just such a like I said, I think he genuinely wants to help people, and I think that is a massive thing for Jack.
I mean, at Sheffield Wednesday, he showed he kind of bought into what the fans are about and what the club's about. He's quite good at doing that as well, isn't he? And sort of getting the fans, understanding the sort of the club you're representing, which is, again, a huge thing, especially at a club like Luton that is kind of I remember coming from in non-league when they had the difficult times, but it's such a unique kind of club, a unique fan base that is obviously had the success in recent years and desperate for it again.
It's a passionate fan base, isn't it? When you're there reporting on games, and you're right in there, and the fans are all around, pretty much all around you. You can feel it there. So it is one of those grounds where it's tight, it's enclosed, isn't it? And if you can get the momentum going and get people behind you, it can become quite an intimidating place to go. And for whatever reason, Matt Bloomfield couldn't seem to quite get things going there. Obviously, he came in when the club was already on a bit of a sort of a downward spiral, so it didn't quite pan out for him. But I'm sure Matt will be back. He was doing a great job at Wycombe, obviously, before he left to go to Luton. So I'm sure he will be back sort of soon. It just didn't work out for him at Luton. But obviously now Jack Wilshere's coming in. It's a great opportunity for him. As I say, a few good results, get the crowd going again, get them sort of passionate and sort of enthused again, and they could be ready for takeoff.
There's definitely something about a midweek game under the lights at Kenilworth Road. Again from the non-league days when they played Oxford, I think when they had 10,000 one Tuesday night. It was unbelievable. I think they sort of sucked Keith Keane's corner into the net in the last minute as they won it, and then they pulled him into the crowd, and I remember getting sent off. It's thinking, well, we don't have much choice. The crowd sort of just pulled him in, and I think he got a second yellow, and he was sent off as they beat Oxford. It was quite a few years ago now, but an unbelievable sort of atmosphere there. And
it kind of works both ways, doesn't it? As well, that's the thing though.
I've seen them booed off when they've been winning at half time and things like that as well.
I was speaking to, I don't know, it was Danny Crowe, I think it was, who was saying that they got booed off it when they were winning 2-0 at half time. And he said that, but he loved it. He said he loved sort of thriving, and I think that's what you need if you're a Luton player. You do need to be able to thrive on the kind of the intenseness of the stadium and the pressure. because he said he went in the dressing room and there's loads of players were kicking off and saying why we're getting booed, and he'd sort of stood there and go like, he's like, let's go and show them, you should love this, like I love this pressure sort of thing. And I think that's the kind of, you do need certain players at Luton, and they've got to be able to kind of thrive on the buzz of it, good or bad. And if you get them, I think that's when Luton will fly, really.
Yeah, definitely. Richie Wellens seemed to be sort of linked with the job and talked about it, and what a job he's doing at Leyton Orient. Beating Doncaster at the weekend 4-0. I think sort of certainly killed my fantasy team, Chris. I don't know about yours. I think I'm still a little bit above you. I think I'm still doing all right. But and brilliant.
Wounded by the Burton Bolton result as well.
Well, we're coming to so two big results the weekend. But start of Wellens and kind of what he's doing at Orient, and following on from last year, and he's got to be in the conversation for some. Again, no disrespect to Orient, obviously are again a passionate fan base and doing such a great job, but that's going to be one of their problems now, isn't it? That every time a job comes up higher up the ladder, he's going to start getting linked to it. You think, surely? Yeah,
well, I feel like the Richie Wellens fan club sometimes, because I'm always writing about sort of the job he's done and how good he is at Orient. But like, and not just there. I think if you look back over his career, like his win percentage is really high. Like he's won promotion at Swindon, he's won promotion at Orient, he won the trophy at Salford, then got sacked like a week later for some reason. And he's only really, he got sacked by Doncaster when they were struggling, they had no money, and he didn't do much at Oldham, but that was when they were being run into the ground, and the owner was bringing players from France who were sort of 17 from the second division and making them play them, sort of thing. So I think everywhere he's gone, where he's had a genuine chance, and even when he's had a half chance, he's done a brilliant job of it. And Orient last year, I think they had a bottom 6 budget last year and then made the playoffs, which sort of tells a story. This year, they just lost the top scorer in the league, and yet again, sort of doing well again. I'm really surprised it's taken this long for sort of clubs to show an interest. Obviously, there's still the Blackpool job up for grabs, and he's been linked with that. But I get a sort of impression they might be willing to give Dobby a little run there, and the caretaker Stephen Dobby give him a little run and see how he gets on. But I'm just, given what he's done on a consistent basis for a number of years, I'm very surprised he's not been looked at by, at the very least, clubs at the top of League One.
In Orient have made they've had a bit of a mixed start this season. They have been up and down, but obviously that result on Saturday against Doncaster was a good boost, and it is nice to see Aaron Connolly getting back to his some sort of real sort of top form now, and scoring goals on a regular basis, because obviously he had a lot of promise when he sort of burst onto the scene at Brighton, but it for different reasons it hasn't sort of panned out for him. But he's shown he's been willing to go down to League One, and it's sort of paying off now with his goals and performances. So he's going to be potentially a big asset for them if they can keep him sort of flying and in form. He's obviously got more than enough ability to play a lot higher than League One. So it's an important season for him to show what he can do, and it's nice to see him back scoring goals on a regular basis.
Yeah, as you say, another mad game with that Burton result as well. Definitely didn't see that coming 3-0 against Bolton. Or did you see it? Well, did you pick them for your fantasy?
No, I certainly didn't know. I spoke to Gary Bowyer earlier in the season, actually, and his whole sort of thing was about sort of trying to cast off the underdogs tag and trying to say Burton could do more than just survive. I think, unfortunately, it is looking a bit more like a sort of survival mission. But if they can beat Bolton 3-0, then if they can get a level of consistency, it shows they can do it. I think the problem with Burton is they're still in recovery mode in lots of ways from what happened in the summer of 2024 when the new owners had come in. They signed, was it 22 players? I think it was either 22 or 24. It was a record in English football anyway for a single window. They literally bought 2 teams worth of players in one go, and then picked a manager who was a rookie, and then were surprised when it didn't work. And I think Gary Bowyer came in and had to sort of deal with the fallout of this, where there was this team that just hadn't gelled, and he's sort of had to try and get players out, get more suitable players in, and he's only really 2 windows into that process. And I think he said it himself that he is still dealing with it. So I think that's the problem for Burton, is they're still really trying to construct a coherent team, sort of a year and a bit on. And at the end of the day, they are Burton as well. They're never going to have massive amounts of money in League One. So I think for them, results like that, I know they beat Bolton 3-0, but at the end of the day, it's sort of 3 points towards survival, isn't it? I think is the way you've got to look at it.
Gary did a brilliant job last season to come in there when he did. They were really struggling and sort of turn it around and keep them in the division. Again, this season it looks as though it is going to be a battle. We did have the story in the paper at the weekend, and the club were quite transparent about the fact that they'd made sort of £8 million of losses last year. So the Nordic Football Group who sort of came in and took over, I think they've sort of fully admitted they've made quite a lot of mistakes there, they've got to be basically cut their cloth accordingly now, and it is going to be quite difficult. So they've made some mistakes. They've owned up to it now, and I think they're trying to run things a bit more sensibly now. But I think that probably was the best appointment they made was bringing in Gary, because if there's someone who probably can sort of keep them in there with the resources that they've got to work with now, it's probably him.
Yeah, talking about.
Funnily enough, Gary actually, Jordan. I did an interview with Jordan Rhodes last week, and he mentioned Gary because he was saying one of the. I asked him who the best managers he'd ever had were, and he mentioned Lee Clark, who was his manager at Huddersfield. But he did talk about Gary. He said sort of Gary was the guy who kind of opened his eyes tactically to the game and made him think about how the opposition perceived him, and he actually sort of let him design his own shooting drills for the rest of the players and that sort of thing. So he was full of praise for Gary.
Yeah, talk to us about Jordan Rhodes. You spoke to him last week and kind of what he's up to in this stage of his this new stage of his life.
Well, he's loans manager at Blackburn now, so I think he's obviously trying to sort of work his way into the game, whether it's through coaching or directorship or something of that nature through that. Obviously retired a few months ago. He was a lovely bloke. He was really funny, actually, in a dry sort of way. He kept, because it's like he referenced it himself. It wasn't me. So, everyone's always said about Jordan Rhodes having a fantastic goal scorer. I can't do anything else. And he kind of laughed and said, yeah, it's pretty much true. But he's like,
if you're a striker, aren't you supposed to score goals?
Well, yeah, exactly.
I know this, I'm sort of like, but you sort of do hear this sometimes, don't you? And it's kind of this, yeah, but what else does he do? He's like, well, I don't know. I feel like a lot of the point of football is to put the ball in the back of the net, and if that's what you're doing on a regular basis, quite a lot.
Yeah, well,
it's good, isn't it? That's what we're like. What else do you want him to do? Do you need him to go and sort of, cut the oranges at half time as well and help with that? I don't understand.
I had this I spoke to Lee Clark a little while ago, actually, just when Jordan retired. I rang Lee just to sort of get a few quotes on it, and yeah, he sort of had the same incredulous air to his voice when I said to him, like, do you think Jordan sort of suffered because the game didn't really want pure goal scorers anymore? And I thought he was going to put the phone down on us or something. He was totally astounded. He was like, what? Why wouldn't you want that? Why wouldn't a manager want someone who scored 20 or 30 goals a season? That's mental. Why wouldn't you build your team around that person? But yeah,
I always say the hardest thing to do is score goals. That's what people often say. That's one of those cliches. And then when someone does score goals, like, yeah, but doesn't link the play enough or something. It's just like, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. But it's
you touch the ball 4 times, score twice. That's, I don't know, pretty good afternoon, isn't it? But this is, we said the number 9, the 2 up top. It's changed the game. The game has changed. There's sort of the Harry Kanes as well. There's not many of them. There's not many of those sort of true traditional number 9s. Like when I was growing up, you could like reel them all off. The sort of the top strikers. There aren't as many now because it's a different sort of attacking way to play the game.
Yeah, well,
and obviously back in the day, you had it was pretty much everyone was playing a 4-4-2, weren't they? So you often had the big man, little man up front, and it was that kind of combination. But now a lot of teams are playing 4-2-3-1 now, aren't they? And there is more emphasis on that sometimes in a lot of teams on those wide players potentially scoring the goals, not necessarily the person in the centre.
Well, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because we remember we did an interview with Adam Lafondra in the summer for non-league paper, and he was saying basically if Michael Owen had come through now, they would probably have told him he was a wide forward, which is crazy to think about what Michael Owen could do.
Yeah, I think I enjoyed Michael Owen sort of started getting his flowers again recently because he's sort of been on some podcasts, and you think like people forget how good he was when he first came through. He was incredible. But Adam Lafondra always reminds me of that funny story, Chris, when we went to Aldershot, that playoff semi-final, Aldershot Rotherham. That was so funny, wasn't it?
I mentioned that to him, actually. I asked him if he remembered. He remembered the goal. Anyway, for clarity, me and
it was a random kickoff, wasn't it? So I sort of got drafted. It was after the FA Cup final. It was like a 6:45 kickoff or something really weird, wasn't it?
It was such a late kickoff. We basically decided it was a 2-man job to get the match report in on time.
Yeah.
So you were on call.
I got call up to help you.
But anyway, it was a League Two playoff semi-final, wasn't it? And it was dire. I think it was 0-0, wasn't it? It was going nowhere.
Yeah. It was first leg as well, wasn't it? Yeah.
First leg. And in the last, I don't know if it was the last minute, but it was definitely last knock-ins of the game. Who were they playing again? Can you remember? Was it Dagenham?
It was Aldershot. It was Aaron Brown.
Yeah, so it was Rotherham, wasn't it? So anyway, they were playing. It was Rotherham against Aldershot, and Aldershot's
Aaron Brown. It was.
Makes this terrible back pass, leaves it completely short.
Totally blind one, wasn't it? A totally blind one.
Yeah, totally blind back pass. Adam Lafondra nips in, takes it around the keeper 1-0 in the 90th minute or whatever it is. And then clearly nobody's told the stadium announcer this. So as the players, as Aaron Brown's trudging back to the halfway line, the stadium announcer announced, it was like, and the man of the match is Aaron Brown.
It was so funny. Everyone was just like, why have you just said that now? He literally played this blind back pass that Lafondra was never going to miss because he was on fire. That he was like never. He was as soon as he went like goal. You knew what was going to happen. It's like the stadium announcer wasn't at the game or something. It was so bizarre.
He just finished counting the votes, hadn't he? It was like
that. He was like, why are they kicking off again?
Perfect timing. Perfect.
I remember you, Chris, going, "Oh, thanks for the line," because literally nothing had happened, had it? It was like a
exactly. It was a terrible game. But he did. To be fair to Alf, he remembered the goal, but he didn't remember. Imagine he was. His mind was elsewhere at that point.
Yeah, he's probably celebrating away. But yeah, it always reminds me when I think of Lafondra. It always makes me think of that funny things that happen. But we sort of talked about a couple of former Salford managers there, and they've made an interesting change this week. They're going into reverting back to their former orange home colours. Obviously when the class of 92 came in all those years ago, when they were right down in step 4 of the non-league pyramid, and there was this big kind of bold plan to get them into the Football League and everything that came with it. They changed their shirts to red to fit in with the class of 92. But they've had a fan vote and they're going back to orange. What do you make of that, John? Good to give the fans there.
I think so. Yeah, nice to go back to the traditions. I mean, I think we saw the vote. I think it was 77% wanted to go back to orange. So over 3/4 of their fans who voted wanted to do it. So I think it's a nice thing for them to do. And I think they're talking about changing maybe the club crest potentially as well, having a vote maybe on that or something on that as well. Yeah. So I think it's good. I mean, Man United are wearing red anyway, aren't they, already in that area? So I think Salford in their orange will be a bit more distinctive and sort of make them stand out a bit more. Yeah,
I'm sure there always used to be an orange flag still behind the goal at every game when I saw them in non-league. So there were the fans who've been there before their remarkable sort of class of 92 powered rise. They do have really good floodlights though. They're in the shape of the club badge. It'd be sort of a shame to change it too much, but that badge was changed as well. But good floodlights. Floodlights. Are you into floodlights? I'm into floodlights. You're not into. You like laughing at me. That's a strange thing to be into. You're not into floodlights.
You noticed it? Like I've never noticed the floodlights at
I
Salford.
love a floodlight. I love a proper floodlight, an old sort of floodlight.
Yeah,
Like
the old floodlight pylons are good. Yeah, the old floodlight pylons are nice to see. When you walk into the game and you see the floodlights in the distance, it's always nice.
Yeah. So you don't get on these modern. Although it is pretty much a brand new built stadium from what they originally were when they took over. It is all changed, but yeah, they're sort of a modern floodlight. But you can't beat the proper old floodlights for sure as you're walking up to a game. Talking of teams you play in. Orange, that sort of colour, maybe Barnet, not orange as such, but amber. But moving on to Barnet and what how they've picked up in recent weeks, and saw an interview with Dean Brennan after their game at their win at Tranmere at the weekend, and he was talking about the fans, and he almost sort of like he was like welling up. He's sort of talking about the fans, but his interviews are box office generally. But if you were playing for someone like that, you'd run through brick walls, wouldn't you? For someone like Dean Brennan, terrifying, but also sort of quite that sort of passion that comes through, and he's obviously getting his crack in league football, having taken done his real apprenticeship in non-league over many years. But good to see Dean Brennan and the Bees going well.
Yeah, because they had a bit of a shaky start, didn't they? We all wondered how they were going to get on this season, but yeah, in the last sort of month or so or 6 weeks, they've really turned it around. They've had some great results. So it looks though he's maybe sort of tweaked a few things, adapted a few things, and they're really sort of settling into their groove now, and sort of looking as though they're going to be going onwards and upwards. So yeah, one to keep an eye on. You went down to see him, didn't you, last season when they were going for the National League title?
I did, yeah. I sent him a message and said, is there any chance you're around this week just for a quick chat? And he said, why don't you come down to training on Thursday, bring the biscuits. And that was gone up the demand. And I made sure I went elite top level biscuits. I didn't go and do anything insane. I went right to the top, the top. They were in a proper box and everything. And he was very pleased with it. But yeah, he just opened the doors. I literally just went down there, knocked on the office door at sort of 10 o'clock in the morning, opened it up, and it was just pitch black. And him and his staff were in there watching clips. I think it was of the Solihull Moors they were playing that weekend, and it was just like, yeah, just come in, sit down, and just full access, just unbelievable. Because he has come through non-league. He started, he's managing in Sunday League when he kind of first went into management around his sort of playing career. Had a good career in non-league and won the FA Trophy and things like that at Grays. But went into management at Hemel and had success there, and had some other jobs as well before going to Barnet and kind of totally turning them around. It's good to see. But yeah, he's brilliant from a journo's point of view, because he's just all access. I think you've spoken to him a few times as well, Chris, haven't you? So he's
yeah. Well, I'll tell you what it is. It's the polar opposite to when Edgar Davids was there, right? Number one, yeah. So I remember going when was it non-league or football league? I can't remember. Anyway, they were. I'm at trips, and I remember ringing them and saying, "Look, can I have an interview with Edgar?" And they said, like, he doesn't do anything over the phone. He won't do any one-on-ones. But if you come down to a game, then he'll probably give you 5-10 minutes afterwards. So I said, right, yeah, I'll come to a game. So I went down. It was a midweek game, maybe a Tuesday or a Wednesday.
I think they're still in the league when you did that from memory. Yeah, I think they're in the league.
I think it was in the league. So I went down and spoke to the guy, and he said, look, yeah, he's happy to do it so long, so long as nothing unusual untoward happens, he'd be happy to do it. So anyway, I'm like, great, sat there watching the game. Edgar Davids, 2 yellow cards inside half an hour, went off. And that's the end of that. He said that was the end of that interview. So yeah.
You just pack up there and just go.
No, I hung about in some kind of vague hope that it might happen, but I was in this little room. I can't remember where it was. It wasn't the Hive. It was
when they were
Underhill.
Yeah.
And he just stormed. He came in that door, or like came in a door over there, and then walked out of a door over there, and that was all he did. He just stormed, and that was all I saw of him. And I went home. So yeah, Dean Brennan, much better than Edgar Davids.
Well, I do remember interviewing Edgar Davids when he was, in the post-match thing. He did. I remember him sort of like waiting for me to sort of clamber over. So that was at the Hive. It's really hard to get out of the press box with any sort of dignity. Basically, you have to sort of almost like drop yourself over the sort of the bars behind, and he sort of waited for me to sort of scramble over some seats to sort of get down there, which I thought was quite polite. I can't remember what he had a. Did he say something about, like, he gets more Christmas cards than
I remember that.
It was a line about Christmas. I get more red cards than Christmas cards, or something like that, or cards from Christmas cards from referees, because he had that problem in non-league as well. People were just targeting him basically.
He kicked him up and down, didn't they?
It was like a, can we get into him? This legendary sort of player. A lot of players who are going against him, and obviously seen him growing up. It's even silly things like that, the Nike advert that he was in and all that sort of stuff that was kind of a big part of a lot of people sort of growing up and seeing that in the glasses and all that kind of thing. There's this awe about him, but people just get into him, and he sort of kind of went for it. You don't think he travelled to all the away games and stuff like that? He'd sort of be a bit pick and choose what away games you went to in the National League.
Yeah, see, you don't get that with Dean Brennan, do you?
But he's sort of like always interesting down at Postman. Martin Allen's interviews used to be sort of interesting as well, and quite an experience. Always something going on at Barnet. But we'll sort of cap it off in with League Two and move on to MK Dons, who I think is it three wins in a row now under Warne, and starting to really sort of push towards where people maybe expected them to be.
Yeah, well, they were well fancied, weren't they? And Warne's I've known Warne. I've spoken to Warne loads over the years. He's a brilliant bloke, and I think he'll be doing what he does, which is go in there and just unite in the dressing room and have them running through brick walls for him. Which is he just treats everyone really well. When you speak to him, he is not like a football manager, not like anyone who's involved in football. He is like a fella you could meet in any walk of life, who's just full of like funny stories and looks after everyone and that kind of thing. I think that is his biggest strength by far, is just how personable he is and sort of how kind of kind and caring he is with his players. And I think at those sorts of levels, invariably that will succeed. So I think he's probably just getting. Well, I think it was probably inevitable that they were going to do well.
It comes from his.
They've got a very strong squad. I mean, they did go out and bring in some very good players over the summer. So their squad must be, if not the strongest in the division, certainly one of the strongest in the division. So you would expect them to be up there. They did have a sort of a bit of a bad patch there. They seem to have sort of come through it now. And I think he was talking at the weekend about the fact that they've got players coming back from injury now. So he has got, that makes it, they have got a strong bench that he can call on. So they're looking, as though they could sort of go on a run of wins.
I think that's one of the most important things. Like when you have got such a good squad of players, and it's kind of that a lot of that almost takes care of itself. It is that kind of environment that you're creating, and that's sort of the way you are with players. Like you say, you've done lots of pieces with him. I remember his piece he did in the non-league paper with Warne, Chris in the COVID summer. And, he talked about his non-league roots and where he kind of came from, and obviously that kind of maybe that sort of that grounding really feeds into what he feels now and how he conducts himself now as a manager.
Well, I think it does, and I think he was very open. I remember the first time I ever spoke to him, he was very open about how insecure he felt as a player, because he'd come from a non-league background, that he always felt he was a bit of a fraud when he was in the Football League. And I think that's probably feeds into, he understands that footballers do sometimes lose confidence and don't feel. And I think a big part of what he does is just trying to make sure the environment is very nurturing and very sort of confidence inducing and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, it's like you say, it's the Ancelotti thing at Madrid, isn't it? On a different level, like if you've got good players, that sort of looks after itself in a lot of ways. You just got to get them playing and make them happy, and kind of the rest will follow.
Yeah, definitely. Well, lots to come in Sunday's Football League paper, I'm sure. Chaps, anything on that we should be looking out for? I think Chris, you spoke to Maritza, have you? And that'll be in I
spoke to Maritza Monday, yesterday. So he talks about his time at Cardiff. He talks about his sort of roots. He came through the ranks at Arsenal and West Ham, and sort of trained alongside Bergkamp and Thierry Henry and Frank Lampard and all the sort of stars of that West Ham team. Ended up in Turkey in non-league, and he had a really sort of storied career. And he's worked his way up to be manager at Cardiff last year. And he talks a little bit about kind of what went wrong there, and kind of their prospects this season. So yeah, I think he's quite sanguine about it. I think the big thing he feels, because he was sacked with 3 games of the season left, and Aaron Ramsey came in and tried to keep them up but couldn't. And I think he feels that he could have, if he'd been given those 3 games, I think he feels he would have. They would still be a championship club now. Obviously, we'll never know, but he's definitely convinced of that.
Well, we look forward to reading that in Sunday's Football League paper with everything else that's going on as well. As you say, Championship football is back, which will be fascinating weekend across all the divisions. Really looking forward to seeing what you guys produce. Thanks everyone for tuning in. As I said earlier, like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. We really appreciate it. Everything that you do really, really helps it on that sort of front. Leave some nice comments as well. And we'll catch you again next week. Many thanks, chaps.
So, cheers, man.
Cheers, brothers.